Thanks everybody for joining our next session, Beyond Farmer Information Services. As important and central as farmer information services are for our smallholders around the world, technology for agriculture is so much more than that. In this session, we're going to be looking at a few different ways that programs and organizations are using technology in ways that are way outside of information services specifically, and showing us some examples of the future of technology to impact the lives of rural communities around the world. So enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the Beyond Farmer Information Services session. We're very grateful to the ICTAg community for hosting this session, as well as the overall conference, and a big thanks to USAID and DAI for sponsoring the ICTforAg conversations. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Beyond Farmer Information Services session for the ICTforAg conference. My name is Jaren Porciello. I'm an information scientist in the Department of Global Development at Cornell University. And what I would like to talk about today is a project that we're currently working on called Agriculture in the Digital Age, a scoping review. And I want to kind of set the stage a little bit for this project before I describe some of the activities, methodologies, and questions that, that we're examining in this work. So the primary goal of Agriculture in the Digital Age is to discover, map, and evaluate the proliferation of digital technology and data analytics in agriculture, and the ways in which they're contributing to the lives of farmers and agricultural service providers in developing world economies. And one of the primary reasons for going forward with this work is that there's a lot of interest surrounding digital services for farmers. And I think that this space is also accompanied by some uncertainty. So evidence is growing fast, but it's growing across many different sources and platforms. And it represents a significant challenge to actually create an overall synthesis that we can all look at, agree with, and disagree with. There's been a number of high-profile reports that have been produced in the last 5 years that are helping to catalyze private and public investments in order for farmers to benefit from digital agriculture. And we're all probably pretty familiar with reports like the State of Digital Agriculture in Africa from 2019 that was produced by CTA and Dahlberg Associates. This report stated that the number of farmers who are reached through digital services in sub-Saharan Africa is only 33 million, which is a fraction of the total estimated 444 million mobile phone subscribers. And I think this lower than expected adoption rate of digital services in Africa is in stark contrast to some of the evidence that we have about the adoption of digital in other sectors, such as the adoption of finance technology, where the African Development Bank reports that nearly 90% of Kenyans use and access mobile phone payments for a variety of services. So this study is designed in part to respond to this. We're using a data-driven approach to evaluate the evidence. What we're focusing on first is creating a strong study foundation using evidence synthesis methods. So for those of you who are maybe unfamiliar with this, in evidence synthesis, no matter what the specific topic is, assesses original studies to determine the effectiveness of interventions. By gathering and summarizing current evidence and providing objective recommendations, they can be valuable aids to decision makers. These methods have been well established in the health sector, and now we're introducing and adapting those for different disciplines. And we use this study foundation to help inform, different study frameworks. But by and large, I want to just go over a few pieces that we're actually interested in evaluating across a variety of different studies. So we're looking for studies that have original data. So a study must report data about target beneficiaries, small-scale producers and suppliers, and to be in their target geographies. We're also interested, obviously, in specific interventions. So studies must describe an intervention, a facilitator, or a barrier of digitally enabled technologies that have been tested with the target population. Then we try to draw context around quality and context of the work. scalability and cost of the proposed interventions. And overall, we collect 90 different data points per study that we can then use in our analysis. And one of the reasons that this is so important, one of the reasons that we focus on these foundational elements is because small scale producers are a very diverse population. And I think we know this and we talk a lot about this. But when it comes to thinking about the information needs of small scale producers, we really do need to have access to more granular data that's coming from these studies. So we know that farmers who are hungry are not always poor, and farmers who are poor are not always hungry, things like this. And so we need to have access to high quality underlying data from these studies in order to tease out more of the nuances that we need when we talk about designing inclusive and digitally enabled interventions. One of the ways in which we do this in agriculture in the digital age is we use a lot of machine learning techniques so that we can quickly aggregate, thousands and potentially hundreds of thousands of articles and quickly review them for the kinds of criteria that I mentioned earlier, the criteria like original data, target study population, and whether the interventions have been tested on the ground. And so in order to do this not only effectively, but also rapidly, we at Cornell University have designed a machine learning model that can really help us evaluate the literature in ways that we care about, things like people, population, and interventions. And one of the ways in which we'll be able to kind of sort, categorize, and allow other people to be able to look through this data is by sorting them through an intervention taxonomy. So our intervention taxonomy looks at things like digital advisory and extension. So what are the informational services that are shared and delivered through a variety of digital means, SMS, interactive voice recording, so on and so forth. What are the digitized farm tools, and what has been tested with farmers? So looking at things like smart tractors, thinking about solar powered irrigation. What do we know about the adoption and the use of digital financial services? So services and technologies that can help facilitate the acquisition of financial services. In addition, we're also looking for information about digital market linkages and digitally enabled policies and infrastructures. And the taxonomy helps us bring all of these different studies that we're looking at together and make them available through an online open source resource coming later this year. And so I just want to give you a quick sense of some of the activities that we have going on as part of this study. So here is basically, we're right here within the study of design, evaluation, and analysis, and getting ready to develop an online resource and frameworks. Later on, we'll be working through an indicator framework that's designed to help think through what are agencies already looking at, and what do we know about what's being measured in the space of digitally enabled agriculture. Finally, we'll bring all of this together through summary and discussion through a variety of different online tools, as well as an online summary report. We're a very small team comprised of myself and my colleagues at Cornell University, Sam Coogan, who is a research associate and PhD student at Australian National University, and then some private sector partners that we have working with us on both our stakeholder interviews as well as communication and media. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I invite you to visit our website, Agriculture in the Digital Age, to not only find online evidence gap maps and a variety of other resources, but help us stay up to date and follow along with our progress. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think I'll go first. First, I'd just like to thank you for that wonderful presentation. That was all quite interesting. One question that I've always struggled with is the balance between generalizability and addressing kind of specific context. And I wanted to ask if you have any insights or thoughts, or how you may be working through that process as you're setting up frameworks.
So thanks, Tyrell. I love that question. I think it's a really important question. And I say that from the perspective of so whether we're a researcher or a policymaker or we're sort of working as maybe more of an on-the-ground implementer in this space, we're all generally familiar with some of the same information, but in fact, we read kind of vastly different things, right? So we've got business intelligence sector reports coming out, great reports produced by groups like FAO or USAID or World Bank. Then we've got business intelligence reports that are coming out. We're hearing about on the ground, like very exciting innovations that are coming forward. And then we've got sort of, peer-reviewed literature and scientific literature. And so even though these things are all thematically related, we're actually reading quite different things. And so the generalizability question, I think, is, I look at it in terms of where do people kind of put their quote unquote faith in information? So are practitioners more or less interested in hearing about these kind of on the ground innovations that are coming through from business sector reports? If that's the case, one thing that I know I spend a lot of time thinking about and worrying about is that we don't necessarily have access to the underlying data. So when a company, is describing a new service and they're kind of talking about the impact that they have, it's not a case of disbelief, but it's a case of, oh, how would we be able to verify that data or be able to do replicability kind of studies, right, with that information. And so from my perspective, it's actually the openness of data that can allow us to have more generalizability, because it would allow anyone to be able to go back and look through the underlying data and come to some kind of different conclusions. So, I kind of started this, this kind of basement level in a way. When we think about how do we create understanding and generalizability, to me, it really starts with thinking through what are we all reading and what do we all kind of take away from these different studies. So.
Edward,
Maybe
do you
one
have
more
any?
question for me.
Oh,
Oh,
go for
sorry,
it.
just one more question for me. I think you bring up a great point about different sources of information, and I wanted to know, does your team tend to privilege certain types of information over others? Like you said, not be able to verify data sources, great literature versus kind of research, robust research, traditional research, those types of things. Will there be any kind of privileging or weighing by source?
That's so one of the ways in which we're trying. So what we do before we set up this study is put through basically what are the criteria by which we want to evaluate kind of each and every information source. So this comes to us through looking at different methods that have been developed in the health sciences sector. So these are sort of known as systematic reviews, but where I want to kind of be careful, we have a big departure point where we know that we don't necessarily have enough qualitative and quantitative data to be able to make a determination about effectiveness. So in ag, we just don't have that level. We don't have those kinds of robust results across enough studies for us to be able to talk about effectiveness. So we kind of stop short, I would say, at thinking about true causal effectiveness. Where I do see that there's always a danger of privileging information is when we can actually find the information. And so I do go back and I think a lot about, what do we do with cases in the business sector? And I think this is a question that I would love to kind of have as a community, maybe across the ICTforAg community, but certainly in other spaces as well. How do we kind of reliably evaluate what are our standards that we have in place for us to be able to reliably evaluate a number of different information sources where we feel confident and comfortable with the results? Because as it stands now, the methods have been developed for published literature that has kind of the verifiable like data and analysis. So already we've got a bias towards those things because the methods that have been designed privilege those. How do we come up with new methods that can be a little bit more inclusive and where we can also kind of push the question a little bit more back to maybe, kind of the business community or the entrepreneurial community to say, we want to be able to include these really innovative products, but it's really hard to do that based on just a website description. So I think there's, we're in this space right now where it's important to think about creating some balance and just having more conversations about, the need for different standards. Thanks for the question.
All right, well, first, I would just like to say thank you for the invitation in order to sit on this panel and talk about something that is definitely um, interesting to me when we're talking about beyond farmer information systems. My name is Terrell Cahn, and I'm a livestock development officer, and I sit within the Bureau for Resilience and Food Security at USAID. So even though my main focus is on livestock, I call moonlight in this space where we talk about research impact, both how to measure the impact of our research investments, as well as accelerate those to get those into the hands of farmers, and of course support those top line goals of feed the future and the global food security strategy. So I thought that this figure would kind of help outline um, most of the discussion that I'll present today. It'll just basically be a couple of examples. So Feed the Future research, as described by the Global Food Security Strategy, supports a pipeline of innovations to address challenges related to agricultural productivity, improving nutritional outcomes, as well as strengthening resilience of vulnerable populations, including women and children. So we know that when we're talking about research and how it fits within innovation, I think that this figure helps to kind of showcase that. So you see research and education kind of on the left side, and then that feeds into the different actors that all sit within the innovation system. And innovation, as we know, is kind of doing something new that hasn't been done before, either in a particular context or something just brand new globally. And research, and where I feel is important, is provides the evidence base to support innovation and may ensure and hold accountable the innovations that we do support and actually just do in order to make sure they are effective and again supporting our top line goals. But we can't do that when we're talking about getting technologies, management practices that are validated and approved, as well as kind of what we call approaches or knowledge processes and the like, into the final hands of the end user without what we call these bridging institutions. And I think this is where ICT definitely has a huge role both now, and I can definitely see that growing in the future. And you'll see there in that box where we talk about there's different types of bridging institutions, and this is not all inclusive, but we talk about stakeholder platforms, of course, agricultural extension, and we know ICT has definitely risen in prominence in that, as well as kind of contractual arrangements or how we bring different groups together. And that, again, helps bridge that gap and get innovations off the shelf of our research organizations into the hands of businesses, farmers, other value or system actors, policymakers, and the like. So I thought I would just provide just one example that we have here in the Bureau to help support that process. And this is more of a platform, more or less, even though it's virtual. And that's called the Feed the Future Innovation Exchange. So the Feed the Future Innovation Exchange is actually a microsite or subset of a website that maybe a few of you are familiar with, called the Global Innovation Exchange, where basically you're able innovators, and in our cases, those are scientists, but of course we know there are other types of innovators, actually create profiles of deployable technologies. And we hope that if we have kind of this source of cutting edge innovations and approaches and practices out there, we can then connect the user or the next user, those that are charged with disseminating those innovations, whether that's a business, again, government, even some of our other development partners at USAID, to show them a source of where innovations are, and then hopefully allow that to connect them to the innovator, which again is a scientist, a thought leader in that field, where I always say that what you see on this site we should not treat it like Amazon, where you can just go and find something for $5.99. But this is basically something to point you to something that may be close to a solution to the problem that you have. But we also know that in order to find the best fit solution for your problem, usually some sort of conversation is involved. So when you go to the site and you see a technology that is of interest to you, you are then pointed to contacting the innovator, kind of in the top right corner of that profile, through an email, and then hopefully that starts a conversation again to find that solution to the problem that you have. So I also wanted to just quickly give 2 examples, since we're here at an ICT conference, from one of the programs that I manage and partner with. So the Livestock Systems Innovation Lab is a research program. It's led by the University of Florida, but it has a range of partners around the world. And they work on improving livestock productivity, market systems, increasing consumption of animal source foods, animal health, diseases that pass from humans to animals or animals to humans, food safety, and the like. So a whole range of things. But these are 2 examples of ICT-related innovations that I thought would be of interest. So the first one that I wanted to talk about was developed in Nepal, and it is from a program that's called Empowering Village Women as Livestock Disease Sentries. So basically, a phone app was developed, and it's a mobile phone-based application to report livestock diseases through the participation of women in rural villages where animal health services may not fully reach, or animal health providers have some challenges getting to regularly. Members of those remote communities report livestock diseases to a lead woman sentry who uses the app to upload the disease symptoms as well as an image of the sick animal, and provides a GPS location to a server. A veterinarian monitors these things depending on the area where they're at, reviews those submissions, diagnoses the disease, and if needed, notifies local authorities to act. This innovation basically allows rapid detection as well as control of livestock diseases. The next tool that I wanted to highlight, also from the Livestock Systems Innovation Lab, and this was also developed in Nepal, is a feeding support tool that is used to enhance dairy productivity. So this innovation is a mobile phone-based application that basically allows individual farmers or extension workers or even companies to develop a ration or a feed ration, full diet for buffaloes or dairy cattle using locally available feed. And you are able to plug in kind of what types of feeds are available. You're able to kind of put in a price point in order to determine the lowest cost ration that will provide a full balanced diet out of what you have. And then it allows you to then actually project the amount of milk that you produce using that feed. So again, it kind of empowers farmers using locally available feeds to improve the productivity of their herds. So again, those are just a couple of technologies and platforms that we use between our research programs as well as in our bureau in order to connect farmers, other end users to evidence-based innovations. Thanks a lot.
I can jump in with the first question. So thanks, Terrell, for a really great presentation. I have to say, I've just recently come across the Global Knowledge, the Global Exchange, and it's a fantastic resource. So congratulations to the team who's working on that and putting it together, because I think it definitely serves a much needed space. My kind of question to you was, what opportunities do you think there are for that particular resource and consortium to maybe link in with other places where people will look for digital farmer services, such as like the Google Play Store or anything like that? Do you know of any plans to kind of think about cross connection of the resource?
Actually, that is a great question. We haven't fully thought that through. I will give an example of actually that feeding support tool. So for the feeding support tool, they have a profile on the Innovation Exchange. Let's say you're searching for a different technology and you come across that. And basically what it does is you are able to either contact the scientist or innovator that developed it to see if it can be made available and where you're at, or they will actually can point you to Google Play. That particular app it's for Android phones and it's available on Google Play. But the thing that I put out as kind of a caveat again is it does take a conversation typically, is that the data as far as the nutrient profiles for the feed components that are there are actually specific to Nepal. So if you're in another country, it may not be fully adaptable. So you probably do have to have a conversation to make sure that we can upload content-specific data for the feeds that are available in your country. And again, having that conversation with the innovator would be important to highlight that. But I think it would be a great idea to actually kind of bring those two things together, that you kind of see something that you like, and if there is a readily available way to access that technology, such as Google Play, I'm definitely going to take that back with me and have further discussions about that. I think that's a great idea.
So Terrell, what's the way for Feed the Future to kind of, I mean, obviously this is one space to communicate what's going on with the Innovation Exchange, but can you talk through some of the ways that you guys are working with, either missions on the ground or different projects on the ground to bring in the information? Because I think that's something that so many people struggle with. How are these inventories generated, and then how are they kept up to date? If you don't mind maybe talking about that a little bit.
That's a very interesting question. One thing that I've, since I've been at USAID, it's a personal, I think, challenge, is there's just a wealth of information. And sometimes it's overwhelming at points. And not just overwhelming for me as an individual, but I think at times some of our current systems and how we manage this data information, it can kind of overwhelm those systems. So one thing I will, of course, will highlight is kind of my first go-to when I'm looking at kind of finding either past reports or even we're supposed to post kind of research findings and journal articles and things, is on what's called the DEC. So the Development Experience Clearinghouse. And it's a website that is a repository for all types of reports. But again, there's probably hundreds of thousands of reports there. And if you type in a keyword for something that you're interested in, I've definitely spent full days trying to read through reports that go back to 1981, 82. And so kind of what you pointed out in your particular project is something I think is a critical need. I think particularly, I would say probably policymakers in general, is there's just so much information, and something that helps us kind of work through that, because ultimately we have to make a decision. And you can get, particularly, I think with working for the government, there can be some hesitancy to make a decision because you want to get it right. And then you have so much information to work through that you also want to be sure that you're comfortable with the decision that you're making, that I think it kind of slows us down while we're trying to bring all that together into something that's coherent and actually readily accessible intellectually wise for a policymaker who may not be an expert in that field. So that would be kind of the first thing I would highlight as far as something that's virtual or digital. We do have the Foreign Aid Explorer, which we kind of use to look at kind of data points around the world. So that talks about economic data, health data, but it's more quantitative in nature. And then we also have, as part of the open data policy, as part of the US government, where we actually put in data sets that are readily available. And again, I think that maybe those data sets may be more of interest to the research audience, because again, as a policymaker, I may not have that economic background to kind of work through that data and use it. So I think we definitely have to work hand in hand with our academic focused colleagues, especially those that are working on these types of usable frameworks and systems, again, to get us some type of coherent set of information to help us make the best decision. But I do think we still have a ways to go. So that's why I was definitely excited about hearing about your project, your work.
No, likewise. And I'll just say, I think we're very much speaking the same language. So you saw a big smile on my face when you were talking about the deck, because I've just finished doing a big web scraping exercise of the deck and working with a lot of the catalogers there to understand like subject terms and thesaurus terms, and really trying to get a sense, because it's such a rich repository. And I don't know that it's used to the fullest maximum degree that it really could. Yeah, so I think it's always going to be a challenge for us, not only to find relevant information, but then, as you say, more importantly, like how do we synthesize it and systematize it in a way that makes it accessible to the people who, you know, really need it to make decisions and want to feel confident that they've been given the benefit of a thorough exploration of the data for decision making. I feel like this is one of our next challenges. So, yeah, really appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, so hi everyone, this is Edward from Burkina Faso. I am managing a project which is an initiative of Feed the Future. And then today I'm going to talk about MAST. This is MAST stands for Mobile Application to Secure Tenure.
Sorry, Edward, sorry, I'm so sorry. Do you mind presenting the slides so that we see them in full screen?
Okay. Is that okay?
Perfect. Yes, go ahead. And if you can restart, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so I was saying that I'm going to focus on MAST, which is the Mobile Application to Secure Tenure. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to talk about what is it. It is an application for Android phone, for mobile phone, and then we can also use it on tablet. And what is good with these application is that it has a built-in satellite images, and then it also contains spatial and attribute data. So MAST, okay, how does it work? I mean, this application, like I said before, it can be installed on an Android phone or a tablet. And then it needs a GPS, an external GPS with good quality of precision. So like it must not exceed 3 meters, the precision. So the accuracy of, the information. So, and also, I mean, you can collect the data without internet, but once you have finished collecting the data, you need to sync the application with a platform. So which means that you will need internet at that moment to transfer the data from the phone, to the platform. And then, so we also, prior to collecting the data, it's very important to create project for each commune, which means that when I'm talking about commune, I'm talking about district. In Burkina Faso, I mean, the country is divided into regions, and then the regions are divided into departments and then and so on and so forth. So it's work like this. And then you will also need a laptop or desktop with good internet connection and also a printer. So, I mean, it's kind of like plenty of information, but there is a flight that comes and then it will give you more, information about how it works. So this is basically how MAST works. So, like I said, you need a phone with all the different accessories, and then there is a platform that's receive the data, and then everybody, I mean, you can see the data. If you collect information about a land, so you can go there and have the information about that land. So if you, on your right, at the top hand corner, you have the village map team. These are what we call the community land members. So they collect data using the mobile phone, they capture land data, and most of these land are used for agricultural production. So it's for women and young people who grow crop, who are doing like animal husbandry, this kind of activity like that. We are using the application, to secure the land in order to motivate people to invest more. Okay, so like I said, you have the village map team who are collecting the data on the ground, and then once they have collected the data, will go to the platform. So you see, there is a cloud, there is where it is written mass. This is the cloud. The data goes there, and from this thing, from the cloud, you have the state people where it is written DPI. These are like the departmental and provincial, the departmental and provincial tax information collectors. And then you have also on your on your right in the middle, you have the commune agent who can see the data that were collected on the ground. And if there is no problem about the data collected, because you can collect data about a land, and then maybe you are like several people who are applying for the same land. And when it's like this, it is a problem, because we can have a land for the same land for two people. It's impossible. So the guy from the government and also the guy from the commune must make sure that, okay, the land belong to the applicant, the person who has dropped an application for this land. And then once these people have made sure that, okay, there is no problem about the land, so they can prepare the land documents, and then the mayor can sign the land document once the applicant has paid the fees for this service. So this is how it works basically. And then the field application of MAST. In 2016, the application was used during a pilot project in the commune of Boudry in Burkina Faso. Boudry is located in Central Plateau region of Burkina Faso. And then the pilot project involved 4 villages. It involved four villages, and the lifespan of the project was 6 months, which goes from October 2016 to March 2017. The goal was to adapt MAST to Burkina Faso context, and then in order to improve land governance system. In Burkina Faso, the land governance system is divided into contains 3 elements. We have, at the commune level, you have the land staff, and then at the village level, you have like the community land members who are helping the commune staff, to secure lands for local population. And then the implementing partners here for these pilot projects were USAID, there was ONFPF, and then the government of Burkina Faso, and also the commune of Boudry. And then a lot of things have been achieved, during these pilot projects, because we were able to, to build the capacity of 3 agents from the rural commune of Boudry, Moctero, and Lumbila. And then 12 people were also 12 members, the members of the village land committee and village land conflict management committee were trained. And then we were able to make land documents, for 2,638 parcels. Which means people who want to secure the land in order, to boost the agro-pastoral activity. So, and then what is the added value of MAST? Because prior to using MAST, people were like making land documents using, the old-fashioned, so the classical method. And then the problem with the classical method is that it was taking more time. It was costly. It was very costly. And then, for instance, if you need a land document for your, if you need a document for your lands, it will take you at least like 3 months, to get your land documents. With MAST, it takes you less than two months, to have your land documents. So the added value of MAST is that there is the control. So it guarantees a better control, of land rights by technician. It has, the building satellite images, which allow you to visualize the territory of the district or the village. And then what is good with this land document, because it includes land security. The problem is that, why do we want to secure people land? If we don't secure the land of women, for instance, and if she is growing crop, if she's growing crop, and then she has no document that shows that, okay, the land is theirs, so at any time she can be sacked by, either by, the original owner of the land, or by, the village chief. So even if although she's working on this land, she need to have a land document, because we want to prevent, to prevent her for being sacked by local population or by the village chief. So, and also what is good with MAS is that, it improves land governance, and it also promotes transparency in land transfer. So, and also, like I said before, it makes mapping process time and cost efficient, which means that it encourages people, to secure the land, because it takes less time for them to secure the land. You pay less, for the service you get. And scaling up of MAS in Burkina Faso, because the pilot project was successful, and so Feed the Future has decided, why not to scale it up to other communes of Burkina Faso. That's why ASTER, which is in French, Amélioration et Sécurisation des terres vers la résilience. Okay, it is a project which aims to, to improve the resilience of women and young people using the MAS application. So the project is active in 27 communes in 3 regions of Burkina Faso. And then what we have done with MAST, as part of ASTER activity, we were able, to train more than 40 commune land staff. I'm talking about the people who are working for the commune. We were able to train more than 40 people. And then we were able to map, the land for, like, we were able to map more than 447.71 hectares of commonly used natural resources. So these commonly used natural resources are open to everybody, either in the district or in the village. But the problem is that if we don't map these commonly used natural resources and then organize the use of these resources, so there is no sustainable use of them, because if there is no organization, people will do what they want. They will misuse, the resource, and then not only it won't be nothing left for the generation to come, but also it will be, used up, in less than no time. So that's what we have been able to do as part of ASTER activity. So thanks for your kind attention. So
sure. First, thank you for the great presentation. Land tenure is something that I know in our bureau, particularly when we talk about kind of agricultural productivity and the importance of capital and finance, as well as what, like you mentioned, women's empowerment, is something that I see more focus on finding solutions in order to help smallholder farmers secure those land rights in a little bit more of a tenable way. My question is around the village teams. Could you talk a little bit more about who makes up the village teams? Is there a role for youth there within those teams? And is it possibly a source of income, or is it more of a community effort in order to kind of benefit that village or community, or do those village team members are tend to be entrepreneurs or the like? So yeah, that would be my first question.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So, like I said, I mean, the land governance system in Burkina Faso is composed of, the village land team, and also we have the district land teams. And the village land team is made of nine people, nine members, I want to say. But it's not, I mean, it's a community effort. It's a community effort. They don't receive any salary. So, I mean, the job is done for free. What they do is that all the application, the land tenure application are dropped, with them. So, and then they have like to check either all the documents, all the file contain all the needed documents, and then they are the one who will take the land application to the district, to the district, land staff. So, and then over there, once the district land staff have gotten, the application, they will have further, further documents, and then they will ensure that, the tax people, because in Burkina Faso, the tax people also take a look at the application, and then tax people will check whether there is a problem or not, if maybe the land is not for the state, or if the land doesn't belong to any other person, if there is no problem about, about the land that is about the land that we want a land document for that. So now the district can go ahead, with, printing the land documents, and also have this thing, the applicant pay the fees. And then, okay, once the mayor has signed, he can get his document. Like I said, but our efforts is for land dedicated to agricultural production, animal husbandry. It's not for like building, like for real estate. It's not for like mining. Our effort is focused on agro-silvopastoral production.
Kaberia, the Kenya Programs Director for Millennium Water Alliance, and also the Chief of Party for Kenya Rapid. Now, Kenya Rapid stands for Kenya Resilient Arid Lands Partnership for Integrated Development, and it is actually a public-private partnership model that is supported by USAID, Swiss Development Corporation, as two bilateral donors, with a range of private sector partners. You can see these colored, I would say, logos over here, and development partners who are Millennium Water Alliance members like CARE, World Vision, Catholic Relief Services, and Food for the Hungry. And together, we are working in northern part of Kenya, looking at private sector-driven solutions, what I would call sustainable solutions, to address some of the fundamental water service challenges in Kenya. And I think it's the same as Horn of Africa. Now, we are using actually the assets and knowledge, expertise, and financial resources from USAID as well as from development partners. And when we combine this with the private sector partners like Coca-Cola, like IBM, like SweetSense, together with the public entities like the 5 counties that we are working with in northern part of Kenya, and the public entities, especially the national government ministries, what we are trying to do is, combining all these assets, we are trying to address complex problems created by inadequate water access and poor governance of natural resources in northern Kenya. Now, Kenya Rapid actually brings public and private institutions and communities together with a goal of increasing access to safe water and sanitation for people and water for livestock, as well as rebuilding a healthy rangeland management ecosystem. Now, it's a 5 years program. It's at the $5.5 million, and USAID happens to be the biggest funder for the program. Now, when it comes to data for decision making, we are actually using technology like the sensor data. You can see on this picture here, the green product that you see there is a borehole sensor. And using the IBM, I would say, platform, which is a dashboard, we are able to send the signal from these sensors to the IBM platform, what we call eMAGI Manager, that can show whether the sensors are, whether the borehole is functioning or not. Now, when it is green, it shows it is functioning. If it is yellow or amber, it shows that there is low use. If it turns to red, then you know that actually the borehole is not functioning. Now, this has really enabled us to use this, what we call Internet of Things solution for water service delivery. And it is helping us to improve decision making by allowing the technicians and the managers to get the information, like what you see in this picture, is the sensor will capture that a breakdown and trigger the email alert to this responsible officer so that they can initiate the repair and maintenance regime. Now, we have realized through this, managers and water directors sitting right on their desk, they are able to make decisions on which boreholes to repair when. And this has actually reduced the amount of time. Instead of managers traveling, 300 kilometers away from the county headquarters to go and check what is wrong with the borehole, then this has also increased financial sustainability for water system. Now, using this Kenya Rapid program and utilizing these borehole sensors to relay real-time information for borehole functionality, we have actually also using another private sector partner called Maji Milele. We are able to triangulate this information using prepaid water meters. And so how do we do this? Actually, the sensor data, if you see this graph here, on the left, top bar on the left, using a period of about 1 year, we are able actually to deduce or conclude that these boreholes are up running about 75% of the time. They are functioning, which means they are green. And when it comes to breakdown, about 185 days, it takes around 185 days to have these boreholes break down at any one particular time in a year. That is on average. But when they break down, actually it takes an average of 35 days. The bar chart on the lower left, it takes around 35 days to get these boreholes repaired. And when you look at annual average, how many water points are breaking, we realize that across all the 5 counties we are working in, and across also Afar region and Somali region where sensor data is installed by the SweetSense, actually it takes an average, or water point actually breaks down around 6 times per year. Now, what are we saying and what have we learned? That actually using these prepaid water meters, what we call water ATM, the communities can actually pay for water well in advance, like what we call in your terms or in the US, they're almost using a debit card or using a drawdown model to buy the water that they use. And this allows the service providers actually to assess funds well in advance for overall operation and maintenance issues and to manage the water system. Now, what happens is that if you don't have any money in your ATM, which is bought through the Safaricom system, then it means you cannot access the water. Now, if your ATM does not have money, it's almost like your debit card. So using this technology, really, we have realized that these water points are functioning most of the time. And this has actually, I would say, improved the revenue collection. In some of the counties like Isiolo County, the revenue collection has tripled. While in Marsabit County, it has actually gone fourfold, which means quadrupled. Now, what does this mean? That through private sector driven technologies, we have been able to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the water management. Now, what are we thinking about next? I know I was only given 5 minutes, but actually these borehole sensors and prepaid water meters that were developed right in northern part of Kenya have been able to be scaled up in the region, that is in Ethiopia, in Somalia, and actually in also Rwanda. And now just recently they have actually expanded to Nigeria. And last year, but one, this is in 2018, SweetSense and IBM got a request from California, right in the US states, to go and install the same sensors there to monitor the underground water. So what are we saying? That Kenya Rapid has been able to develop a technology that has not only been utilized in Kenya, but also been scaled up in the region. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for joining us for our sessions in our third breakout block. As you can tell, I've got a little bit of a different background and, let my hair down a little. But that's the beauty of a virtual convention. You can take the first set of sessions from your couch, second set from your kitchen making lunch, and the third one sitting at your desk. Next, we've got another set of breakout blocks, so please go ahead and head on over to your Whova agenda and check out the great sessions we have coming up. We'll see you all soon.